Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. This is Season 8, Episode 18. First off, you may be wondering, is this the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast? Because you heard different intro music. It's true, I've changed up some of my intro music and outro music, and I'm trying something new. I hope you all like it, and I welcome feedback. Today I have the wonderful pleasure of talking to Vicky Bennison. She is the person behind the Pasta Grannies website and the two well-received cookbooks. Vicky Bennison is just a great guest. I had such a charming and enchanting time talking to her. She's got a marvelous voice, and she could just read from the yellow pages and it would sound wonderful. So talking to her was amazing, and she's an authority, on Italian food and other foods as well. She's written many cookbooks on different regions, from Spain to Italy and more. And she's just very well versed in European food. And I loved getting a chance to talk to her about her cookbooks and her YouTube sensation. I mentioned in the interview that it reminded me very much of my beloved Foxfire books, that not only do they have information about Appalachia and its history, they talked to people in depth about the region and had really good biography pieces about the people in there, and they had them doing crafts and making things that were typical of the region, but also really gave a good sense of the people and the place like nothing else could. Likewise, Vicky does that with Pasta Grannies. She really gives an example of the diversity and the individuality of Italy, not some just homogenous idea of it like many cookbooks or travel pieces do. Without any further ado, I'm going to take you to my conversation with Vicky Bennison, and I know you're going to love it. And here we go. Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones. Today, I am very honored to have author Vicky Bennison on the podcast. Vicky has, since 2004, introduced the world to a wide array of nanas, grandmothers, aka pasta grannies in Italy. These grannies show off their skills in making pasta by hand and other regional Italian dishes through YouTube, but that's not the whole story. This very YouTube channel has gone on to be profiled by the likes of the New York Times, The Guardian, and more. And in October 2009 saw the release of Pasta Grannies, the official cookbook, as well as the book Pasta Grannies Comfort Cooking, which came out in September of this year. Vicky, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, Vicky, you're internationally known for your food writing, but your background is in international development. This is a large 180-degree turn. What caused this shift, and how do you come to food writing?
Well, it wasn't really a 180-degree shift because I grew up in Africa, and that meant going to boarding school, and that meant two things. It meant letters home and the fact that cooking was a reminder of home. So all those letters were just full of food. So that's how I got into writing about food from about the age of 5 onwards. And then with a career in international development, going to visit the food markets was one of the first ways to kind of get the pulse of a country or a region. And again, I would find myself writing home about it. So there was always that sort of push to write. And so then I started writing more. And so the consulting was happening in parallel to the actual writing. So it was a kind of shift rather than a spin.
Now, you divide your time between the United Kingdom and La Marche. How did you first find yourself in Italy?
Well, I first found myself in Italy when I was 5 years old, because I'm old enough that for my parents, flying back and forward from Africa wasn't the way you did it. You went by boat. And so as a young girl, we would end up in Venice. So you would end up with a very special plate of spaghetti at the end of this journey.
Nice.
So that was my introduction to Italy. And then I actually chose Marche because of the port of Ancona and the fact that it's on the way to Greece, which is a very random thing. But my parents have a home in Greece. So I thought, I'll still see them if I buy somewhere nearby. Or I move somewhere nearby, then I'll still see my family and things. So that's how the decision was made in that particular area of Italy, Marche, which is on the Adriatic, Croatian-facing side of Italy.
your first book was about Mallorca, The Taste of a Place, a culinary guide to a beautiful island, which is a very beautiful and lush book. How did you come to write this book?
So actually, there are links between that and international development, because one of the things that I used to come across quite a lot was this idea of sustainable tourism, and how tourism was often seen as an answer to a lot of countries' or regions' problems. And so in thinking about that, there was this idea of, well, you can't make it too sort of hair shirty and a penance to sort of be sustainable. You have to make it fun, and the best way to make it fun is to eat well.
Yeah.
So the sort of unspoken sort of push behind the books was that you arm yourself with a culinary guide that actually was taking you to small businesses rather than the sort of well-known brands and stuff, and taking you off the sort of main tourist attractions and into the countryside, and get to know all the wonderful sort of traditions. And in so doing, you'll be engaging in sustainable tourism. But I just didn't tell you that's what you were doing. So that was the idea behind the book.
Okay. Now, the book Pasta Grannies, Comfort Cooking, Traditional Family Recipes from Italy's Best Home Cooks came out last month to much acclaim. It's full of great recipes in making pasta and other dishes of Italy, but mostly it's a testament to the women cooking the food. What impressed me the most when I was reading this was how much it reminded me of the Foxfire books, which also captured a still life of a region of America. So about what is being created, but also not. It had kind of multiple layers there. Do you want to talk about why you wrote this book and started the YouTube podcast and how it all came together for you?
So the focus has kind of shifted. Initially, I was looking at, oh my goodness, all these different types of pasta are no longer being made, and it's only older women that are making pasta by hand in Italy. The sort of tradition is shifting, is pasta making is now becoming professionalized, and it's no longer something that is a life skill for women. And so I'm just turning that.
That's good. That's fine.
Take that.
I can take that out.
And so it was the focus was just initially the pasta, but then it very quickly became, partly because that's what I'm interested in, is the sort of anthropological aspect of it, the sociological aspect of it. It became as just trying to a way of making pasta becomes the lens through which you encounter these women, and it makes it easier for them to talk about their lives. And so I always say that people come for the pasta and stay for the grannies. We're witnessing a generation who through circumstances are very special and very resourceful and resilient, and I hope I paid tribute to them. So we're on a mission, still traveling.
I was going to say, I really love how you highlight the personalities and the individual person that you're interviewing and kind of going through, the making of the pasta. And I know that sometimes they're like, they don't even want to be filmed, but they'll make you lunch. And it's they're kind of all unique, and you kind of really show their who they are and really show their personalities. Have you got a chance to kind of revisit some of these people, and what have they thought about being on YouTube? Have any of them been able to see themselves on YouTube?
Well, we always tell them. I mean, what happens is that, YouTube is a bit of a mystery to women who are 85 plus. Mm-hmm. So it's usually a member of their family that we tell. So I have a granny finder called Livia De Giovanni, and she's kind of like the social rep, if you like. So she makes sure, when first of all we find the grandmothers, it's through the family and through, they have to agree. It's a kind of group thing. It's not the grandmothers themselves making that decision in isolation. And so then you, having been having had your video posted, some people actually love it and really enjoy the experience. And then we go back to them several times if we can. So we've recently, so this week's video is a woman called Ada, who we've actually filmed 3 times now. And So when the video is actually posted, we then tell the family that it's up, and that they have a chance. They all love it. So that's good.
Now, this has been going on for over 8 years now. You started it in 2014,
Yes.
and you have
Crazy.
close to 500,000 subscribers, which is pretty amazing. What do you think makes
So that's an out of, well, so actually it's 2.5 million across the three.
Oh, wow.
The three. So
That's pretty impressive.
It's yes. I mean, every time I look at it, I go, wow. I mean, that's several football stadiums. It's a small town.
That's crazy.
It's extraordinary.
What do you think it makes it so successful?
I think it's a kind of visual warm hug.
Yeah.
It's
That makes sense.
Yeah, I've had a lot of, particularly during lockdown, I've had loads of people write in and say how it's kept them sane. And every time, they feel stressed or something, they give themselves a dose of Pasta Grannies. Obviously that's not what I set out to do, but it's how it's turned out. And I'm very humbled that people respond so positively to it. And that is partly how the second book came about, because it's called Comfort Cooking, because so many people wrote in and said these things about how they felt about Pasta Grannies. And so the collection of recipes is less about finding every single shape across Italy. It's more about those recipes that have resonance with the viewers. And so there are several recipes for lasagna, for example, because everybody loves lasagna. And also they love pizza, and puddings are comforting. So that's how, there's a tiramisu and bunette, which is just lovely nutty chocolatey pudding, and they're dead easy to make because I can't make pudding, so they have to be easy.
I was really surprised I thought it was just going to be pasta. So when I saw the desserts, I was like, wow. And then the chocolate, the brunette you mentioned looked really beautiful. I'm like, I really want that. That looks good.
No.
They're really kind of like a Moorish. You like I could really eat that. That looks amazing. And then the pies were unique. They're not a lot of the traditional pies I'm used to seeing, although I don't think we always have a great image of Italian food in America. We probably kind of cartoonize it. So I really like seeing these authentic things. It kind of made me sit up and go, oh, wow, that's interesting. I want to read more about that.
Pies are interesting. So the pies, I think, I'm not a historian, but I think that there's kind of this resonance of Greece and things like that in these pies, and the way that the pastry is made, and the pasta matta looks like the Turkish pasta, and I suppose it's the limit to amount of how the variations you can do with wheat flour and water, but it's a particular thing of Liguria, and absolutely I think it's a wonderful thing. They have so many different types of pies, vegetable pies mostly, and cheesy pies and stuff. So we had to get them in because they are so delicious.
There was one thing I liked a lot. I thought was really amazing was a fried kind of dough for breakfast.
Well, the herby one for breakfast. It's like a pancake batter.
Yeah. That looked really good.
And you fry it up, and it kind of makes so it's a sort of scrambled pancake, which is full of lovely herbs. Is that one? Yes, I was thinking deep fried. It's like, oh no, the Italians are great at breakfast. So so there's this wonderful unpronounceable pancake batter that you make. It's eggs and flour and stuff like that, and then you chuck in all the herbs that you can find. And the unusual bit of that was the lovage. Do you need me to say the name, because I'm gonna have to look it up?
No, it's okay. No,
that's fine. It's not Italian. So it's like that's the very interesting thing about when we're filming is you say, do I speak Italian? And is yes, I do. And do I understand them? No, I don't, because there's so many different regional accents that are so different. And the closer you get to other borders like Austria or Slovenia, and the more you end up going, ooh. didn't understand a word of that one. So, and of course, pronunciations are so very different. It's a variety that keeps you on your toes. Let's put it that way.
You mentioned you have a go-between that kind of works with you to find
Yes.
the grannies. Do you have like a selection process? What are you looking for when you find them?
So we do. We say, okay, we're going to Abruzzo. What are the pastas that we're going to find in Abruzzo? Excuse me. I'll just take a drink of water.
You're good.
So we'll say we're going to Abruzzo. Let's, what can we cover? Where should we go first? And then I will sort of say, actually, I really need to, I think we should definitely do, pasta alla mugnaia, which is this kind of big circular single rope of pasta. And so then Livia will make contact with little organizations called Pro Loco, which are like little promotional organizations attached to town councils, or the organizers of food fairs and festivals and things. And so ask them who they can recommend. So that's how we find them. Is they then make these suggestions. Livia then introduces Pasta Grannies, and the family and the grandmother decide whether they want to be involved, and sometimes they say no. And that's absolutely fine. They can change their minds at any stage. I've even once, thank goodness it hasn't happened more often, but I've actually got into a kitchen and someone said, "Oh, I don't want to have my face in this." Oh, I'm sorry you said that. So mostly it's like they kind of see it as a huge event, and they'll go to the hairdressers and they'll get in their Sunday best, and and everybody has a lovely time. So that's good.
Now, I noticed there's a lot of different pasta shapes and types that I've never seen before. Are you constantly surprised by the different pastas that are being made on the show?
Yes. I always think, we must have done it by now. The 8 years of doing this, we've done it all, and actually we haven't. We're still finding new pastas or new names for pastas, because that's quite often what happens. There'll be several different names depending where you are. But I think it's when you sort of reflect that Italy is only 150 years old or whatever it is, and that before that, I think, since pasta is actually a group activity, and because you have all these different dialects and stuff, and you have to have consensus about what it is that you're making, I think it's not so surprising that you then end up with different types of pasta names, pasta shapes, because you've got a group of women making it. So you can get these little variations in shapes and stuff, as you kind of go over the mountain or round the corner. So that's, I think, how that's actually thanks to someone who pointed that out to me. I haven't developed that theory all on my own, but it's language that's driven the diversity partly. And then on top of that, there's the geography of Italy. So that the mountains and the sort of huge changing climate, which affects what can be grown. So in southern Italy, you get durum wheat flour, and in central and northern Italy, it's tender wheat flour, soft wheat flour, and of course rice. So that's why rice is in the book, is because until very recently, pasta wasn't the sort of main carbohydrate in northern Italy. Polenta and rice were one of the favorites, some of the favorites.
This episode is sponsored by Culinary Historians of Northern California, a Bay Area educational group dedicated to the study of food, drink, and culture in human history. To learn more about this organization and their work, please visit their website at www.chnorcal.org. We often have in America, we have a cartoonized version of Italian food where it's all kind of homogenous. But it seems from looking at your show and talking to other guests, it seems like there's a lot of variety and there's not a lot of homogeneousness as far as like how the food goes. It's different in different regions, and maybe people from different parts wouldn't cook the same things. Is it kind of different from area to area in Italy?
Very much so. So someone from Liguria won't have any idea what someone from Calabria is cooking, and actually very little interest in what they're cooking, and vice versa. I think it's so. So in America, the sort of huge numbers of Italians that went over, they moved because of extreme poverty, and then met the land of plenty, and then also, I mean, you correct me, when one of your viewers will correct me, is like sort of whole villages pretty much would sort of translocate, and then you would end up with a version of what was being cooked in that village, so that then that gets extrapolated out as what Italian food is, but actually it's from, an area south of Naples that has gone on to become popular and given rise to Italian American cooking, which I think is distinct to what is happening in Italian cooking, gastronomy, traditions, that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you have any favorites of the different, I mean, I know that's probably a very hard question, but do you have any that kind of stuck with you and are some of your favorites of the different pastas?
Yeah, I do have a great fondness for Liguria because of its use of herbs. So one of my favorite recipes, and I have dozens, and it might vary from day to day what my favorite is, but it's a ravioli that's called panzotti, and it's filled with foraged wild herbs, and then it's served with a walnut and garlic pesto, which is it's absolutely delicious.
That sounds amazing.
And that's book one, actually, that's in. Yes.
Now, do you have any tips for people that are starting out making pasta? It looks, I mean, when I watch the Pasta Grannies make it, it looks so simple, but I know this is deceptive because I've seen people make tortillas and they make it look easy. And when I go to make tortillas, I bungle it. So any tips for people that are starting out like me?
Yeah, pick an easy pasta. I'll say that again. You just hear, can you hear my?
No, I can't. I just hear you. You're actually doing really good.
Yeah. Good. So my advice to you would be to pick an easy pasta, one that doesn't necessarily need, say, rolling out a sfoglia to a very thin, a thin layer. It's try something like cavatelli, which is you just make a dough and then snip bits off and roll your thumb along it, and then voila, you have pasta. And then decide whether you like doing it, and then commit to doing a certain amount of practice if you want to evolve your pasta making technique. It's quite easy to get to a competent level. To be really good, it does take practice. It does take several years, but you don't have to achieve that before you start eating really great pasta.
Do you have anything that surprised you over the years as you've done this program, and if you've worked with so many different people over the years? Is there anything that's kind of come across to you that surprised you coming out of this?
Well, I'm always really impressed by everyone's generosity. I mean, if you think of it from their point of view, is a bunch of strangers, four of us kind of invade their kitchen and they haven't met them before, and how welcoming they are. And they always, they sort of cook for us. They don't cook for YouTube or the audience out there. They're just making it for us. So that's always something that impresses me. And I suppose the other thing that you notice is a couple of things. One is there aren't any comfortable chairs. So these women never sit down. They're always on the move, which is why they're still healthy and active and stuff in their 80s. And no cookery books. They have learnt from their mothers and their family and don't need cookery books. So they have this kind of collection in their head. So that's, and younger cooks, that changes, but that of that generation, that's where it's at. They have mastered these this set of recipes from about the age of 8 onwards, and that's kept them going through their life.
In many ways, this is an archival project, and you're doing something where you're kind of taking a snapshots, I should say, of a region and a people and a time. This to me is very fascinating and pretty exciting because, historically, this will be a benchmark in history where this will be known and people can go and look at this, and this is being saved. Have you heard anything from people in Italy or like appreciative of this being kind of saved and kind of put on record?
Italy is there are lots of Italians who are very appreciative, and also at the same time acknowledging that Italians should do more themselves. And of course there are guardians of recipes and then special organizations, and I'm sure that in the future there will be other projects that actually take advantage of social media or new technology and have more inventive ways of preserving and promoting those traditions. There's a certain irony that is me, a non-Italian, that's doing that, and I always say that actually it takes an outsider to get an overview. The Italians have a particular passion and love of the food of their area. It's not all of this idea of Italy is not as strong in Italians' heads as it is for Americans about this idea of Italy. It's not homogenous.
Well, Vicky, I want to thank you for being on the program. I've really enjoyed getting a chance to talk to you, and I'm very excited about the Pasta Grannies book and your previous books as well. And I'm going to put links to them on the bio on the website, and they can be purchased online or through better bookstores. I want to encourage people to do that and also watch the YouTube program. We'll have a link for that also. Vicky, thank you for being on the podcast. It's been an honor.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's it. And thank you very much. I'm so honored to have you on the podcast. It's been lovely talking to you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
I want to come to Italy someday. I hope to get a chance to. No, I've been so encouraged by some people I've talked to, and it's going to happen for me someday. I'm really looking forward to it. And this has really helped.
Which bit do you want to go to?
Well, I mean, now that I don't know, because there are so many different places I've been reading about, and I want to go to, of course, I want to go to Rome. How could I not, but I also would like to visit some other regions. I'm not really sure where, but I also want to go to Sardinia, and I want to try some other places around there too, and just see, I don't know, I'm still trying to figure it out, but I don't want to just be the tourist and go to Rome. I'd like to kind of stay a little bit and like spend, 3 weeks there and kind of like, really get to meet people and talk. And
Sardinia is amazing. It's from a sort of anthropological point of view, it's extraordinary. I mean, that traditions are still thriving there, and it's not for tourists. It's for themselves. And get these sort of guys dressing up as sort of weird animals, with skins and horns and bones, and it's like, wow, where's that come from? And the sort of textile traditions is not just food, it's everything. Is extraordinary in Sardinia.
It just seems like there's a living history going on still, and it just is really impressive.
And what they speak is a language, not a dialect. I got told when I first started doing this, and I said, and I referred to Sardinian dialect, and I got jumped on. No. No, it is a language. Oh, sorry,
Have you been do you come to America often?
I'm actually coming over on Saturday.
Have you ever seen I mentioned this because I had talked to 2 other authors there who are Italian, and we talked about Olive Garden, and one of them, she had basically heard of Olive Garden, and she just laughed. She couldn't talk. She was laughing so hard she couldn't talk about it, which I thought made me laugh really hard because I thought it was hilarious, because it is kind of hilarious. So.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's that land of plenty thing, isn't it? It's all you can eat.
Yeah.
Which is actually the antithesis of our grandmothers, who are very frugal. They waste not, want not, never eat large quantities. that kind of thing is very interesting.
Because I see on the show, like people are making pasta, they're making like small portions. In America, it's always like gigantic. It's always like, even I say from Italian people here, they'll do like the Sunday sauce and they'll do all this stuff, and it's so over the top. And it's like, I'm seeing Italians do so much less. It's sort of subtle. It's
Yeah.
very much like, not such a big production. It's very scaled down. And I just don't know. I wonder where the disconnect is sometimes, because I guess maybe because everything here has to be like over the top. So maybe that's part of it.
I think it's that abundance that America has. I think you maybe don't notice it, but it was in the past, it was so poor in Italy that suddenly you can sort of have shops with things in it, and stuff is amazing. And so of course you go completely like a kid in a sweet shop. You want to eat it all.
Yeah.
That's how it started.
I think so. I think we get a misconception of foods, though, because like Mexican food really gets misrepresented in the United States, and it's our neighbor, for crying out loud. It's not across the world.
Yeah.
It's next to us, and we completely get it wrong most of the time. I don't really get it.
Yeah.
It's weird. Oh, well.
Yes, I'm sure there are sort of PhDs to be done on that. The sort of the disconnect. I think food does change the instant you travel with it. There is no you cannot replicate exactly what happens in the home country, if you like, the home region. The products that you're using are different. The cheeses will never be the same. The temperatures aren't the same. So that's why it never tastes the same when you try and reproduce a Greek food, for example, not just Italian. And that's where the sort of unraveling of that recipe happens. As you're adapting it, and then suddenly it's morphed.
I've heard that McDonald's is not doing well over there, and that makes me happy to hear. I hope it never does.
There is definitely a change. There are things that are happening with Italy. The food scene is changing, but hopefully that won't take foothold.
I hope not. I'm against it.
Okay. Yes.
Well,
Likewise.
Vicky, thank you so much, and I'll let you go. And I really appreciate you being on the podcast. That was my conversation with Vicky Bennison. We have links to her website and her YouTube channel, as well as her cookbooks, in the bio. I recommend them heartily. I most prominently want to recommend you look at her YouTube channel and watch it. You're going to love it. You can't not love it. So you're going to want to check that out first, and then definitely get her cookbooks. If you like Italian food and you like to make it, and you're serious about making pasta, you're definitely going to want to get both of these books as well. So you're going to want to get on that also. Next week, I'm going to have a little bit of a diversion. I'm going to have two authors on my podcast that won't be talking about cooking, but we'll be talking about something that's very important to libraries, which is open education. I'm going to have Elizabeth Dill and Marianne Cullinan talking about their book, Intersections of Open Education Resources and Information Literacy. You're going to want to check that out. If you are, somebody who might be going to college soon or has been to college, if you're a faculty member, this will be very important information for you. If you're like me, like a librarian, and are interested about open education resources, you're going to want to check this out as well. I'm very glad that you got a chance to listen to this podcast. I always love having people listen to this and give feedback. Please share it on social media if you want to have friends listen to it. I always like when people give recommendations and shouts outs on social media. I hope you all have a very good week, and you get to try some of the recipes and some of the cookbooks I've featured on the show. Hope you've enjoyed and been maybe introduced to something new on the show as well. Have a really great week and keep on cooking.